also had open spaces on top of hills called hill forts. So the Neolithic was about being inside the earth, and the Bronze Age stone circles were being above ground, so to speak. So there are probably two very, very different and distinct cultures that were going on in the British Isles then. And what are they for? They really, really do change our consciousness. A lot of people receive downloads at these ancient sites. A lot of people feel simply relaxed and feel enriched and uplifted for interacting with these sites. So they really do change us. And what the ancients did, they looked for particular patterns in the earth, such as underground water, which emits a geospiral pattern, which is deep, deep, deep yin water born within the earth. And around this spiral pattern, you always have a circular pattern called a primary halo. And it was that circular pattern that dictated the shape of a stone circle. Obviously, it's a circular pattern. And it also charges the stones with energy, this kind of beautiful circular pattern, the primary halo as it's called. So our ancient ancestors were fully aware of Mother Earth's energetic system and recognized these wondrous energies that underground water, for instance, emits.
Now, okay, so you've added a lot of data points there that also correspond with crop circles, don't they?
There
underground waterway systems, points, nodes, circular patterns, things like that. I have a pet theory. Some of these stone temples were placed at these places because the crop circles were denoting these patterns that you were showing, and they showed up in whatever was growing there that could be discerned, the grass or the field or whatever. And then these were used as the templates to build the stone temples on. That's just a thought that kind of, I wonder if that's how they got these henges, how they placed them is that they were kind of, and it would be a harmonic pattern anyway if it was a frequency that was being applied to the planet.
Well, that could be the case. That was Terence Meaden's theory back in the early 90s as well.
All right. Oh, good. Actually, I'm not just a complete idiot. Right. Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, the thing is, that Avebury Henge, for example, has an outer circle that isn't even a circular shape. I mean, a lot of the stone circles aren't actually circular in shape. They're kind of ecliptic. So the big outer circle of Avebury, for instance, has like a straight section in one of the sectors, and then it goes circular again, and that's over 1,100 feet across alone. The average just true crop circle was more to 60, 90 feet across, if indeed there is a correlation there. I mean, I'm very open-minded, could well be, but I think some of the very larger stone circles there's probably more going on because you could fit so many inside the large complexes.
Yeah, well, maybe it was a site of many, and they just thought, okay, well let's build a moat around this lake so they don't get ruined by floods or anything. Yeah. Well, anyway, so there we go, and Wiltshire, as I said, I used to live in Neston down near Chippenham, and it was it was a rather damp little place in the middle of nowhere, so we thought, and then we discovered it was directly above a secret underground military base that was like 30 meters below the soil. So that was another thing. And that was found by this fellow Alf Riggs. Did you know Alf? He's like our sort of parents, our grandfather's generation. He was one of the British Society of Dowsers, and he came to douse our house. And
yeah, I recall Alf Riggs quite well. I mean, he's passed over now.
I imagine so, yes.
Yeah, and I think his son is carried on some of his work. I mean, Alf Riggs was a very good diviner, and he noticed the immense signals that underground yang water, as I call it, that's rainwater that falls down from the sky and fills up the water table. He registered the actual emissions of that, and that they were very high, and that if you live above that type of underground water and it's very damp, it's considered carcinogenic. And that was looked into by Dr. Kathy Batchelor back in the 80s, who realized that statistically a third of all hospital patients, obviously that are in hospital, are the result of geopathic stress. And if you take yourself away from geopathic stress, and geopathic stress is the underground yang water, certain grid lines like the Curry Net, and today the Hartmann grid and the Benker grid, for instance, they conduct a lot of electricity, and they also drain the environs that they're found in of negative ions and produce a lot of positive ions, making it quite toxic, if you will. So Kathy Batchelor, she looked into all of this and realized that, they take the human body into a neutral zone within a house or an office where you spend a lot of time, and you can improve your health immediately.
And sometimes more than your health, or your karma switches round and other things. So it was fascinating. I spent an afternoon with Alf, almost kind of empathically downloading his attitude, and he's like, yeah, I get it. It's like, sort of Vulcan mind meld that you can do. And it was, just an amazing moment in time for me. Because every time he was talking about these things, I could feel what he was talking about. They, tune in. And I realized that that's what dowsing is, and that your mind can tune in. Well, Maria, as a, very experienced, what is it about us that changes frequency that allows us to dowse? Is it the brain? Is it the pineal gland? What is it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think what it is, it's a tune into our kind of spiritual self, and our spiritual self has all the answers when when we're not separated from the universe, if you will, and our kind of sixth sense prevails. A lot of experiments have been done on the brain for dowsing, and that does play a role. I mean, because it was found, I think it was by Robert Beck, but forgive me if that's wrong. It's Robert Beck or Robert Becker. And he did some experiments and found that even in like healing, if somebody gives Reiki to somebody, when their brains were monitored, it was always around 7 hertz, which is, 7 to 11 hertz is the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of Gaia. Okay. And it's also when our brains are in the alpha mode. And it was found that the person that received the healing, be that Reiki, spiritual healing, whatever, received that around 7 hertz. And when the dowsing rods went into found, bingo, I found something with my dowsing rods, that too was at 7 hertz. So it seems like we synchronize with Gaia's heartbeat of the Schumann resonance, which is a beautiful thought alone.
It is indeed. And, well, when I do readings, I tune in and I tune into my heart, and from that point I move out and I move into like earth mind and then Gaia heart. And every time I do it, it's like, I get this wonderful, being, it's almost like being held by a cushion of leaves. I don't know how, it just seems to encompass like a blanket of leaves, warm blanket. And then, I connect with my spiritual partner. And so that's how I steer my spiritual ship, as it were, to try and keep things pure. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. That's really, really lovely. I mean, that's what I tell my students that douse with me. I like to feel that, we dedicate ourselves in servitude of Gaia, dowsers, because we're dousing earth energies and things like that, those that are into land energies anyway. And also I've always, dedicated my dowsing rods to Gaia as well. So, and I think, that we can all tune in. And the fantastic thing is at the moment, JP, I really do feel that we're at a turning point. And the wheel of kind of fortune, if you will, is turning in our favour, because a lot of people are now getting really switched on to earth energies and realising that there is something to all of this. And I just had a recent inquiry from a lady in Italy who's an architect who wants a bespoke course with me. I mean, she's not really too interested in pendulum dowsing for chakras, for example, or remedies or anything like that, which I also do, but specifically focusing in on the ability to dowse and decode properties and houses, so that for future builds she can think about the building. She already knows about sacred geometry, but she really wants to go to the core of the issue. That's the energies that are influencing and imbuing the building. So I really do feel that, you know, everybody's we're all helping one another switch on to different things. Your radio show switching people on, you know, and I really do feel quite positive about the future.
Yeah, it feels sometimes like, I know it's all going to work out, but really, does it have to be this way just today, you know? But anyway, it's actually been quite a relaxed day. I didn't have so much to do because nobody turned up for their shows, so I just played two of my favorite shows, which had a very Pleiadian and Lyran bent. Now, I don't know whether your memories go kind of far back off planet, but this is the context in which our show is now sitting. So here we are, using, yeah, I mean, you've got your, very kind of, what we call hard-nosed scientific, and did you do archaeology, at college and?
Well, what I did, in my 30s, I was a mature student. I studied with Bob Clark from Wessex Archaeology with the University of Bath prehistory. Wow. So that's just focusing on Neolithic, Bronze Age and Iron Age specifically. That was the course, you know. So my love is prehistory. It really stops, you know, at the Roman invasion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's actually, that's when history stops and lies start, because it was the Roman invasion that's changed and, tried to wipe out as much history as, of the original story of her story, Gaia's story, which is very different. And that takes you into the realm of the intuitive as well as the intellectual.
Yes, I mean, for sure. And if you look to some of the Greek writers, you know, Pythagoras is obviously, you know, a name that we're all familiar with, but he himself said he was taught by the Druids, according to John Michell, who, as you know, he was, wrote a lot about Glastonbury and places in his book, the New View of Atlantis. So that's what John Michell said, you know, the Druids influenced the Greeks. So we were considered such a holy island. It's just an amazing thing. Those white cliffs of Dover conjured up the imagination, and we were so sacred, and the place where the Gaul, the French Druids came to learn in the British Isles, and it was said that by one writer of the 5th century AD, that the French Breton sailors would suddenly awake at midnight and go out to their boats, and their boats would feel that they were really heavy, laden with people, but they were the souls of the departed, and the souls of the departed would sail with them to England. That's how sacred, you know, our Western mystic tradition is in the British Isles.
Bloody ghosts coming over here.
We should tax them.
Taking our jobs. Haunting our houses.
That's a bit.
It's just a meme, folks. It's just a meme. Anyway, but yeah, so, you know, I'm a fan of, Michael Tessarian and also of many others, and, you know, of my own physical research. I went to Ireland, last September. And I had a completely random, spontaneous week. It was an amazing time. And basically it felt like we were coming back and drawing back this place. This is where the Lyrans landed. You know, this is like originally when people got here. in order to form what eventually became Lemuria and Atlantis and things like that. And they were known as the Tuatha De Danann. I can never even speak that. You've obviously heard of that.
An Irish person said it's the Tuatha De Danann to me. I got told off for saying Tuatha
De Danann.
De Danann. That's what an Irish person called James Swagger told me.
James. Yeah, I've had him on. I've had that man. I've had him on the show. So it's always good to get the right pronunciation, because I always mispronounce things. That's why I got profession. So the idea is that the, civilization came from these isles out after the destruction of Atlantis, because this was part of Atlantis.
I do think, there is something very sacred about these lands. I mean, we were the spiritual capital of the ancient world. Ireland has some wonderful sites. I mean, I've been around Ireland with James and with tours. They do have, especially around Sligo and the Carrickeel-Carramore area, which are wonderful ancient sites I'll describe in a moment. They are far, far older than some in England anyway. They are literally the ancient sites of the British Isles.
It's lovely there. I mean, I live in northern Scotland, and there are some forests here that nobody goes to. They do not see a human soul. And they're like that sort of jungle-y kind of thing with, there's lichens, all over the trees and hanging down, all this stuff. And there's a very similar vibe in Ireland. This is, it felt like, wow, this is kind of like Scotland, but all kind of even more old, even more untouched by human soul. In that there's, it's more sacred. It's more, with the spirit of the land that is unblemished by human touch.
Yes, I mean, I went to Vancouver Island last year, and the northern part of the island just doesn't have roads. It stops, and everything is a wilderness, and you do, even on the edge of that, feel the kind of energies of nature undisturbed and unmolested. So that is really nice. I mean, some of the Irish sacred sites are, absolutely wonderful. I mean, one of my favourites is Baltony Stone Circle, which is partly aligned to the sunset on May the 1st. And that's a beautiful stone circle. It could have been at one point, a cairn or something, but some of the stones there are beautiful quartz-like, and they really do feel very, very strong, energetically speaking. And that was set above a very, very vast lake, and that was like open air as well. And it's got a fantastic view on a hilltop. And the other ancient sites of Ireland, like Carrickeel, that I mentioned just a moment ago, they are spectacular. They're on top of a very high hill. They are quartz cairns, so they glimmer in the sun and the moonlight alike. And as you enter these cairns, which if you imagine, there's a huge mound of quartz that has an entrance, a very small entrance that you can go in. And they are literally white quartz boxes when you enter inside of them. So you're literally in this huge, beautiful, perfectly worked stone quartz box. They are very, very special locations. And there's 3 that you can visit freely and openly, called Carrickeel. I would recommend anyone in Ireland to go there. You will come out a very different person, and if you're into sound toning or anything like that, you will not be disappointed. You will hear the reverb coming off from any sound toning work. So they are very, very spectacular. And that's what I mean, JP. Some of the earlier sites, you entered them, you went inside them. And in the Bronze Age, in the later times of the stone circles, you were outside again. But one thing that I discovered at Avebury Henge, for instance, was the play of light and dark that you can have at a stone circle. And what I mean by that, there was an author which I've previously mentioned, called Terence Meaden, and he discovered that the central stone of the southern stone circle, because Avebury Henge had a massive stone circle of 100 standing stones, inside of which you have 2 smaller stone circles containing around 27 to 30 standing stones. And in one of these, the southern inner circle, which William Stukely, an antiquarian of around about the 1720s, he called the Temple of the Sun. So you imagine there's 30 standing stones at the centre, a gigantic stone that once stood around about 21 feet tall. And on the very sacred fire festival dates of the Druids and the Bronze Age people, which for example is May the 1st, Beltane, Imbolc, etc. Well, say for example on Beltane, the shadow of the obelisk stone would fall perfectly onto the stone aligned to the Beltane sunrise. Then at sunset, exactly the same would happen, but in the western direction, the shadow of the obelisk stone would fall on the stone aligned to the Beltane sunset. And that happened on the 8 sacred days throughout the calendar. And what Dr. Meaden thought was that was the alignment of the phallic obelisk hitting the diamond-shaped female standing stones representing fertility of the land. But what I noticed for my book, Avebury Sun, Moon and Earth Energies, is that's only part of the story, because the outer stone circles at sunset, one of the shadows would align to the stone of the stone circle, which aligns to the obelisk stone, which aligns to the sunset stone, creating a massive black dark line that stretches from one side of Avebury Henge to the other. And like I said, that's over 1,100 feet, one continuous shadow line that would happen only 8 times throughout the ceremonial year. So there was like a drama going on. And I also discovered that the southern portal stones at October the 31st, November the 1st, which is Samhain, which is the Celtic New Year, those 2 shadows co-join right across the entrance of Avebury Henge, creating a very thick black line. And so I started to work with these energies as one does. And I felt that if it's the start of the Druidic New Year, the Celtic New Year, as you enter that dark kind of shadow band, you could release anything that you felt, held you back in the year, any frustrations, any negative emotions, things that went wrong, and, to reflect upon that in the dark shadow. And then as you step into the light, and it is really dramatic, these shadow lines, because they go from black to the sunlight again, you're stepping into the new year with a new vitality and illuminated by the light that is before you. So I think we can turn these kind of shadow lines into quite beautiful, workable, intense rites that can be worked with. And it gives you a sense of the light and the dark at a stone circle. So I think that it's not just Avebury Henge that has that either. A fantastic stone circle called Castle Rig in Cumbria. And for your listeners, Cumbria is in the north of England. Imagine a fantastic, very large standing stones creating a very large circle, but surrounded by mountains. And as you look around when you're stood in the center of this stone circle, all you can see is the dramatic beauty of the mountains. And the largest stone in that stone circle, you can clearly see it, and it's on sloping ground. Notice that most stone circles are on sloping ground to enhance the shadow effect. That largest stone at Castle Rig at the midsummer sunset casts a shadow line that's 2 miles long, and ancient sites are aligned on that shadow line. Had to have meaning to our ancient ancestors.
That's interesting. So now you're talking about creating much larger networks than just these local small stone circle things, that they all line up. And perhaps at one point of the year, if you was to kind of have a drone that could go high enough, you could see these shadow lines connecting up all across the country.
I think there's a lot of standing stones that were connected by outliers. And by outliers, I mean you have the main, let's call it the main stone circle. And then, for argument's sake, a mile away from that stone circle, you have a large standing stone standing on its own. That's called an outlier. I think it was the outliers that the shadows from the stone circle would hit the outlier, which would then go to the next stone circle. So it's because if you look around ancient sites like Stonehenge, Avebury, Longmeg in Cumbria, Castlerigg in Cumbria, they do tend to have outliers, or the antiquarians recorded that there could have been a standing stone there, but now has been long gone because of agricultural encroachment towards the stone circles. So I think, yeah, you're onto something there, JP, and I agree. I think that was in all probability, an encodement in the land.
Yeah. So, yeah, very interesting. So around, you're currently, you run these tours, around Avebury.
Yes, and I'm going to Malta on April the 25th, and I'm running a tour with Kerry Cassidy on June the 1st to the 8th. And I do tours to Glastonbury, to Stanton Drew, to, lots of sites in Europe and in the British Isles. And I also run dowsing courses by Skype for overseas students and home study courses as well.
Fabulous.
Yeah, get in contact with me at mariawheatley@aol.com, because unfortunately my esoteric college was hacked recently, so I'm rebuilding a website back up.
Oh, right, yeah, I know. I was actually listening to a broadcast that I did sometime last August, while I've got about half a dozen, I've got more now, about half a dozen websites that run off my server, and they'd all been completely hacked, so I was completely frozen in midair, as it were. But I'm really pleased to say that I've got them all working now, and they're all buzzing away, so that was really nice. Nice to hear the change. So, one day soon, Maria, all your websites will be working, and when you hear the archive of the show, you'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember. God, it felt terrible, but it feels all right now." So in the future, you'll feel all right about it, and it'll be fine. And you'll have what's the word? Refined it slightly,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like it's going to be quite like the Phoenix anyway,
Absolutely.
and I'll kind of be born anew with it. So yes, and like anything in life, it has its downside and it has its upside as well.
Mm.
Yeah. So yes, and so I really enjoy taking people around to ancient sites. I do small groups, one-to-ones, for example, or larger groups. And I feel at the moment that a lot of people are really sensing the energies of stone circles. They are our ancient temple places constructed by our ancestors who, let's face it, knew an awful lot about the earth, about the sky, about celestial beings, the inner earth. They were really switched on, and we're coming back and remembering their times. And that's what I feel people are doing. They're reconnecting to Gaia at these ancient sites. You can kick off your shoes and ground yourself and, just feel at one with these places and touch the stones. It's very privileged at Avebury and places like Stanton Drew and Rollright. You can still touch the stones, unlike Stonehenge, which is guarded by security guards. Even with private access, you can no longer touch the stones.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
This is an interesting thing. The antiquities department of the powers that be say, oh yeah, stone circles there in England, pyramids there in Egypt, everything's separate. And now we find that there are pyramids everywhere and there are stone circles everywhere. Mm. And, there are crop circles popping up everywhere. And, that there are pyramids in Alaska and pyramids down under certain valleys in America and, certainly in China. certainly in Peru, so there's pyramids everywhere. They're not just a thing for Egypt, and there's stone circles everywhere, and stoneworks and all that.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is about the stone circles, that there's a stone circle in Somerset, not far from where I used to live actually, JP, called Stanton Drew Stone Circles. And the myth about that is, and it's common myth because it's also associated to the Merry Maidens, for example, in Cornwall, that there was, a bride and a groom, and they danced into the Sabbath on the Sunday. Clearly you can't be a happy person if you're a Christian then. And they were all turned to stone, yeah. So they were turned to stone, all the people, and 2 stones, the bride and groom, and the stone circle and the guests, and that type of thing. But even in Pakistan, where you get a stone circle, it has the same myth associated with it as well, that there was a wedding party and they got turned to stone. So I think some of the mythologies link these sites, and they are a way of remembering maybe the people that were associated with them. Maybe, as some archaeologists point out on a very mundane level, that there are some burials beneath some of the standing stones in some of the sites, which could represent the people being turned to stone, for example, or possibly, they contained the spirit of the person in ancient times, and you could contact the spirit of the person that was turned to stone, or within the stone, for example, because a lot of people do feel that they can communicate on many different levels to the stones, and be given advice by the stones as well. And when we kind of touch them and interact with their energy field, we do receive something from them. My own studies at stone circles have showed that, when you do touch stones in certain places, there's a register of electromagnetic energy entering your auric field or your physical body. Cannot be denied with the equipment that we have used. So there is this interaction. And I also feel, and I've developed a technique called energy transference, where you could get a positive part of earth energy. And it's a really nice spot. I mean, you can go in your garden, listeners. Just find a really nice area of your garden, and ask to work with Gaia, and feel that your message is being received when you ask to work with her. Draw up that positive earth energy through your being up until the heart center, and then transfer it to somebody else with your hand, or even into the house, or to somebody that needs it. So that's one way that we can work with earth energies. And I started doing that after doing house clearings. I realised that some people were left feeling quite disempowered if they had a kind of negative energy in their house. It was one way to, find a positive area, positive earth energy, and do something positive with it to re-empower that person.
House clearings, yes. So basically you're being what we'd call a geomancer.
Yes, definitely. I do things like house clearing with dowsing, and working with people that have had problems in their homes. I mean, just recently I was working with a couple, and they had a beautiful barn, a beautiful barn conversion. It's absolutely gorgeous. But they couldn't sleep there. Couldn't sleep for, literally love nor money. So I went around and, connected to the spirit of place, the energy of that house, and really felt very ungrounded there. And so I said to them, I feel really ungrounded here. I think the house is ungrounded. And they said they'd looked into the history of the place because they wanted to solve, why have I got this beautiful place and I can't sleep? And it was on an old foundation where they hadn't been infilled properly. So it literally wasn't grounded, that house. And when we did some grounding techniques and visualization connecting to the house and made it literally ground back into the earth, they're sleeping perfectly now. So, I mean, houses can be, they're living places. I mean, it's like our Druid ancestors. They saw everything as living. Streams, places. And that's the beauty. And everything was connected, to how they felt the beings were. So I feel the same about a house. It's a living place as soon as.
Absolutely. You know what was really interesting? When we were driving around Ireland, there was one place where we stayed, which was this teeny tiny, tiny little cottage. And it was like, I don't know, but it was really old, really like several hundred years old. And when we sat in it, we almost were like, oh, well, what do you like? I mean, would you like a cup of tea? Would you like, we were asking the house how it felt about how we were, you know, it was a very strange connection. But very lovely, you know, this is a little old Irish house. Anyway, I live in a very old cottage here. There's an old bothy, on the moors, up here in Scotland. And, it's also got its own character and, had its own entities and continues to have entities, because it, once they discovered that I could clear beings, because basically they had to go through the second death and then move on to the light and all that, recyclement and all that. But they, once I cleared the first lot, then another lot came and it's a continuous thing now. I asked them to stay in the corridor and don't come into the bathroom.
That sounds like a plan.
I should have a sign. Maybe I should make an etheric sign. But, yeah, I mean, it's a journey that I've really, I started out as a computer programmer. It's like, what am I doing with all these, psychic events going on in my life? Well, this is what my radio show's been about, or, finding out who I am and finding out who everybody else is as well.
Yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful journey, and this is where I think the ancient sites can connect us to our ancestral past, and which all can also, because time isn't linear as we know, it's far different than that. We can connect us to our future as well. And like I was saying earlier, when you get an ancient site like a stone circle beneath the primary halo pattern that sets the size and its circular shape, you're underneath a big, vast amount of underground water, and water has memory. We know that. So we can, pick up on the past with, at ancient sites like the Akashic records held in the water. And we can also, use that water as well in a beautiful way to cleanse our own body water. I've also done a lot of work with that, making techniques of, cleansing our body water, and I do short Skype courses on that as well, because I feel that as much as our brains have memory, so does our body water.
Cool.
So by cleansing and rejuvenating when working with, these vast underground water sources, and some are very, very vast, we can literally cleanse and replenish and feel rejuvenated by cleansing body water. And two Chinese geomants that taught me many, many years ago some wondrous dowsing techniques always said to me, Peking, they didn't like calling it Beijing for whatever reasons, but I respect how they wanted it called. And they always said Peking is under a vast amount of water, generating a massive geospiral and primary halo. And where you get a huge volume of water, you also get a horseshoe shape surrounding the spiral, the circle, and now you've got this beautiful arc of a horseshoe shape. And they said it's one of the largest in the world. And in New Scientist a couple of years ago, using sonar equipment, the team found that indeed Peking was under a sea the size of the Arctic Ocean.
Underneath it?
Yeah.
Fabulous. Now, this still puts forward my other wacky Earth theory, is that the Earth has been expanding for the last 70 million years. And that is part of the proof of it. Because if the continents exist on a smaller planet, then they're hard. And like an eggshell, if you imagined an egg inside the eggshell grows and grows and grows, the curvature of the eggshell leaves a gap underneath and it kind of bites in at the sides. and the large continents are like that. So there'll be, and you'll find that there'll be seas underneath Russia, seas underneath America. That's known as well.
There's more. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see that there's like the continents are just kind of sitting on top of this big kind of gap underneath.
Yeah, there's more underground water than surface water.
Absolutely.
That is for sure. And then if you go down even deeper to sort of 400, 800 miles deep, inside of rock, you have the rocks producing water as well that feed out through the fissure systems into the larger pools of water. Just like you get, small streams going into rivers, going into seas, the same thing is happening inside the earth. And what scientists feel now is that in the very deep caverns of like a river, if you will, flowing within Gaia, they can even have their own weather systems, is speculated now.
Well, they're huge. It's like, I see it like a cake, like a pudding that is expanding, like I had a girlfriend, she was Scottish, of course, it was like, you mean, it's like a great big haggis. It's like, cause you put the haggis in the thing and the skin tears like a sausage. And and then you see the stuff underneath, and that's what the oceans are. If you look at Google Earth, you can see that exactly that. Anyhow, I'm not here to push a thing, but, it's, the idea is that the Earth is very porous, and a planetary sized porousness is like, you could have, chambers the size of a country. With, as you say, an entire ecosystem in it.
Yeah, and when you have, pockets and chambers of water, you will get a kind of concentric circles and a spiral. And if you go to any indigenous culture, like the Aborigines, their symbol for water is often concentric circles with 3 or 4 lines. I think it's 4 lines actually. Join in another concentric circle, and that's exactly how it would be flowing and mirroring in the ground. You would have like a pocket of water, a stream, just would mean then connecting to another one, and you can always tell how that stream or river is flowing by the harmonic surface pattern it emits. And in dowsing, a harmonic surface pattern is what your rods react to, is the surface pattern of what the underground water or earth energy is producing. So they all flow in particular manners. So just by dowsing, you could tell if there was an underground stream in your house. Is it slow? Is it fast? Is it a pool of water? Well, basically what it's doing. What our ancestors really loved is that if you have an entrance to a stone circle, for example, quite often you would have a stream entering in through that entrance. And there was a master dowser called Guy Underwood, whose papers I have inherited, and he always looked at water lines and track lines, and then he came up with another energy line which he called an aquistat, and thought it was a fissure in the earth. And after looking at many of his surveys and dowsing, I had that eureka moment. I thought, no, what he was trying to explain wasn't a fissure, it was a female yin water, primary water stream or river. And you often get these flowing into the entrance. And if a river, in Druidism, if a river flows east to west, that's deemed very, very sacred. Yeah, it's one of the most sacred ways you'd put vortex offerings in there, and it's considered very, very powerful and to contain very powerful spirit of place and ancestral connections. Now, if the same underground, if you have an east-west flowing underground stream entering into an ancient site, that is really giving the spirit of place a huge sacredness about it. So you'll be walking on top of these deep underground streams and being imbued with their energy. And the Male streams tend to have geopathic stress, who doused your place. Alf Riggs pointed out, and so do many other dowsers. And I've noticed with equipment that the female aquastat streams that I discovered, what Guy Underwood meant rather, were emitting really nice signals between, again, that 7 to 11 hertz, quite often 10 hertz actually, which is quite beneficial.
That's fascinating. Now listen, we're at the top of the hour. This has been going an hour already, and a resident of Bath, at least he used to be, grumpy old fellow, grumpy old Irishman, Van Morrison.
Yeah, Van the man.
You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio. Yes, indeed. Welcome back. 27th of March now, here in Britain, just past midnight. It's good to be back. It's been the nightmare fortnight for the last 2 weeks. I'm sure as you've experienced, Maria, that the last 2 weeks are the hardest weeks of the year, as well as the one in October. It's usually just 1 week or so in October, but it's 2 weeks in March where the time zones are out of step by 1 hour, and well, just everything gets messed up, and it always comes upon one by surprise. I never plan for it. It's like, oh my God, here it is again, and it's like one of those recurring nightmares that you forget immediately. You wake up from it, and then when you're back in the nightmare, it's like, oh my God, here it is. I know this feeling. Oh, what a terrible feeling, and it's like, are you a Doctor Who fan?
Not really, no.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Well, I won't make any references then. That's all right. So, welcome back, Maria Wheatley. And, there we go. Van the man, indeed. I saw him 1975. Was that? Yeah, man. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a long time ago. And I think maybe 84. I think he was at Glastonbury in 84, I think. Or was I in Stonehenge in 84? No, Glastonbury in 85, Stonehenge in 84. Yeah, I went to the last Stonehenge festival, the last, decent one, before the Battle of the Beanfield and all that business. Wow, that was a trip. That was one trip. I mean, actually, there was several trips, but it's, let's not quite go there. Well, we may go there eventually. It might end up, the story will come out of that. But, so yes, megalithic sites, earth energies, origins of civilization, Tuatha Dadanan, all this stuff, all this business.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And we were talking just before the break about, the underground water flowing into the entrance, and you're, entering above these wonderful frequencies. Well, you also have the leys, or the ley lines that connect these ancient sites to one another. And it was, as you're probably aware, JP, it was, back in the 1920s and 30s that the wonderful chap called Alfred Watkins,
yes,
wrote the old straight track and said that, you can easily find leys. So, I really always like to say to, people, find leys in your locality because it's so easy. As Alfred Watkins said himself, you just get an Ordnance Survey map, OS map. You have a look for any ancient sites that could include things like stone circles, standing stones, barrows, hill forts, manor houses, because a lot of the masons built upon energies like that. So he included manor houses, clumps of trees and springs and churches and chapels. And, once you get 5 or more sites in a straight line, it's bingo, you've got a ley. And then you can go out into the field, so to speak, and visit the ley, if you will. And then you can find out whether it's got what type of ley it is, because Sig Longren, he lived in Glastonbury actually, JP. who wrote a book called Spiritual Dowsing, which is a really lovely little book, actually. He was one of the first to say that there's different types of lays. Some are just topographical, linking site after site, and don't emit any energy. And some do have energy, and he called those E lines for energy ley lines. And some are astronomical lines because they have energy flowing along them, but they also point to a celestial event. And John Michell was one of the first to point out that the St. Michael lay, which is probably the most well-known famous lay, goes from Carnival in Cornwall to Hopton on the Norfolk coast across England, some 300 miles long, and Avery's at the right centre. But he said that points to a celestial event. So according to John Michell, he felt that some of the lays were manipulated by man to point to these celestial events. And Beltany Stone Circle, for example, in Ireland, that points to the lay that goes through it, connects it to the Beltane sunrise. So he felt that some of the lines were being manipulated and worked to so they could align to these events. And some of the lines have earth energies coiling around them, creating a bit like the symbol of the caduceus, male and female rivers of energy, earth energy, not underground water, that moves in between them, and that's a ley system. So all of these energies of Gaia's interconnecting site after site after site was one of the wonders of the ancient world that our ancestors created. So it's about the underground water, it's about earth energy, it's about lays that have energy flowing along them, which can come out of the ground as well. They have been registered to do that. So I always like to think, we can get to know our kind of local lays as well as, reading about them. Go out there and see if you can find one. What is it like? Get out some dowsing rods and see if they have energy or not. Because it's so easy to douse. It's probably one of the most easiest kind of skills that one can learn. And it's great fun as well. You can start to kind of decode the place by using some dowsing rods.
I've been doing dowsing for a very long time now. And it's got to a point when I don't use rods. And I just hold my fingertips together. And if they stick, that's a positive. And if they don't stick, then that's a negative. It's like a magnet. It's very, very, very distinct. And then there's the kind of sticky, like pulling a sticky thing apart. That's the kind of, don't ask that question kind of thing. Ask a different question. But what it's gotten to is also, when I was walking, it was a few years ago though, and I was walking around Findhorn, and that they have these places, and they place them. They have these little buildings that they deliberately placed in these ley lines. And I was walking along the road, adjacent to one of these places, and it's called the Sanctuary, the Nature Sanctuary. It's a beautiful little place. And I felt this, it felt like I stepped over or stepped through a kind of slightly more jelly-like bank, and then it felt like I was walking across a shallow stream, and then another bank. And I thought, I've just walked across the ley line. It's like a little river, isn't it? But here's the thing, Maria. There are two ideas about ley lines, is that they're like rivers in that they snake around. But there's also this kind of crystalline edge thing going on. Straight line energy. What do you think what's that all about? What's that about?
Well, what it is about, I'll answer that. That's how I teach people to dowse. I teach them to use their bodies and recognize different signatures of about 8 energies, because that's how the Chinese taught me. So that when you go into a house, you do a walk around the house and you identify the energies like you were describing walking across that ley. That's the first thing I teach. Then I get them to pick up their dowsing rods, after that. But going back to the second question. So, Well, they're both. If you have a ley system, you have the straight line for sure that have been documented worldwide, and then you have the currents that entwine them. That was discovered by Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst back in the 80s. So you can have both, you see. And the confusion of this began because dearest Hamish, the late Hamish Miller, who forwarded one of my books, actually, lovely chap, wonderful master dowser, and just like really nice guy as well. He was one of the first to note that the energy current flowed around the St. Michael line, but he called it the Michael line. So you got the St. Michael line with the Michael line flowing in it. And he always said, I wish from the get-go I called it, a current or a river of energy rather. So a little bit of confusion was born about that. But they were pioneers. They were finding these currents, and there wasn't any terminology then to describe them. So yeah, they can be both. But it does seem that the ley, is one thing that I've always noticed, the ley is always almost containing these two rivers of male and female energy. And because the currents, the St. Michael current and the St. Mary current that entwine the St. Michael ley line are never more than about 5 miles apart. The ley is anchoring them in some manner.
So, like you're saying, it could be on a very grand scale, this line, and the energies that are around it, almost like the insulator in a coax cable. You got this thin signal going through, and then you've got this coaxial cable, which is the ground shield, to stop interference getting in. So it could be on a planetary scale, that sort of thing, a container for the line, the energy being transferred as it passes through the land.
Well, it's a wonderful analogy, actually, and I agree. And I do feel that, because there was another visionary, and he lived in Glastonbury as well, and I don't know if you know of him, JP, called Robert Coon. It was Robert Coon who, before Hamish and Paul discovered this ley system, Robert Coon was talking about this vast planetary system that would go through Glastonbury and on through Moscow, then to the 4 mountains of Bali, through Tibet, onto Ayers Rock, through Lake Titicaca. And that's Mary and Michael of those encoiling the ley. That's where they flow globally around the place. So yeah, you're right that this is part of a kind of global system that reaches out and joins Glastonbury to Moscow to Lake Titicaca to Ayers Rock. I mean, that's the extent that these earth energies flow around the globe.
That's right. And there's this one up in the mountains of Scotland that there's no city there. There's probably some underground city. There's probably a military base under it. But point number 11 on the Bacahagan's grid is strangely an uninhabited and uninhabitable place because of the bloody midges. You've probably you've been up to Scotland, I'm sure.
Oh gosh, yeah, Orkney and Callanish and Aberdeenshire.
Yeah.
Exactly what you mean.
So you know about the dangers of the midgie. The glorious little midgie, which is why it's mainly uninhabited, because it's uninhabitable. These little insects keep all humans out. But so there's these lines that pass around the world, like you say, and here I am, I'm in Findhorn, and again, there's all these, oh yes, we're on this grid and that grid, and we're connected with this, and we got this crystal from here. But there's also these other kind of what you call an ad hoc grid. For instance, if you took a whole bunch of crystals and charged them in one place and then sent them all over the world to all your friends, that would be another grid, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Intent is all with that sort of work, I believe, JP.
So, there is some kind of consciousness about either repairing the grid or transforming the grid from one dimension to another, from one, now what was it? From the square to the triangular. was the thing that I heard years and years ago. That the square consciousness is rather, it's not moving. It's very solid and staid, and very imperial, rather than the more triangular networks. But I'm not that aware of. So, millions of things I'm thinking about. One of the things is that the healers group who we work with this thing called the Golden Grid, which is an etheric grid. So, I think what I'm asking, Maria, is, are you aware of the different levels of grids that encompass the planet on the different frequency bands? There's a good.
Yes, I mean, there are numerous grid systems. Just in the 80s alone, a German physicist found seven positive ones and 7 negative ones. And, you have lots of other grids besides that. And I do feel that they penetrate, everything penetrates through different levels of reality, I feel. I mean, I would say the same about, the layers and the earth currents. They're all on different levels, all throughout our solar system. So I agree, and I think we can work with these grid systems on different levels, like we can work with the earth energies on many different levels. Like I said earlier, I really do feel intent is all, and that if we have an intent to work with something on a particular level, then you're contributing to that consciousness on that level. And
wherever, now, it's something that we were sort of touching on before, it's what I've been taught to call a recapitulation. And, it's connected with what we call pilgrimage. In that, say, I existed let's say, in the 1500s. And say I lived somewhere in the north of England. That if, for instance, I might have at some point in that lifetime visited the local stone circle, done some ritual thing, and by imprinting my essence there, by connecting with my essence there, I would imprint my essence there. If I were to return to that same stone circle, for instance, my essence is kind of stored as like a kind of public backup. And I would regain that energy of who I was. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, I do that on same thing, JP, just a different expression of that, because I would work with that with the underground water there that has like what I feel is the Akashic records, but I feel.
Yeah, that's where the imprint would be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, that's it. But I think, we can all read the same book, and we can all get to the end together, but we might kind of do a little bit of a different thing to get there, and that doesn't matter, and that's the wonderful thing, because we can work individually, as groups, absently, there, by just connecting to these ancient sites. So, there's going to be listeners out there that probably have thinking, well, what's Stanton Drew like? Well, Google it. Stanton Drew is the most feminine stone circle dedicated to the earth, the moon and Venus. And just by kind of energetically making a connection, and a really good way to make an energetic connection to an ancient site is go into its esoteric center. That's like the near center, not the geometric center of a circle, and make that connection. And before you know it, you might be picking things up from, the energy field, like you were just describing, JP, picking these things up about our experiences, whether they're past, present, or even future.
I think a lot of people do like they'll do a healing course, and in that healing course, they'll do some sort of, ancestral procession at the local stone circle. And it's very likely that will reflect the past life activity and, actually act as a catalyst to restore those things. It's always good to do these things.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And JP, I mean, talking about kind of combining past lives and dowsing and ancient sites.
My favourite subjects.
Yeah, well, you're very knowledgeable about them. It's lovely discussing this with someone like yourself, actually.
Thank you. I'm honoured. I actually am. You know, you're very learned. You know your stuff. So it's really fantastic to have you on. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. Lots of ideas exchanging, and it's wondrous. But with, combining all of those things together was, a couple of years ago. My dad taught me how to do a 2-point fix within dowsing. That's like you get a map basically and you douse across the top of the map, and let's say the pendulum, swings in one direction. You draw a line, preferably with pencil. Otherwise you have lots of pen lines all over your map. And you put a line down.
Rotring pens, yeah.
Yeah. Then you go down the other side and you draw another line, and X marks the spot in this time, and wherever X is, that means you found something and you have your intent of what you're finding. Well, I got a map of the Stonehenge in Vivons, and I thought, what if I did it the other way around? What if instead of getting my intent of I'm going to find a ley line or whatever, what if I just asked the landscape, you show me what I should find? Yeah, so I thought I'd do that, and I kind of went across the map like that, and I kept coming to this long barrow. And at the same time, I was holding a past life regression course, and I just do small groups, and it was quite good. But anyway, it was an odd number. So I said to the student, you're going to have to regress me, because we all get the experience of doing a regression. Her face went white. Oh no, not the tutor.
Yeah, and, doing the boss. That's really going to work out well, isn't it? So what happened? No. Fabulous.
So what happened was, through that regression, I was describing some kind of like larger head. I didn't actually say elongated in my regression at all, but I was describing and kept putting my hand out. My head feels different. And so I was describing and saying my head feels different. So I started researching this barrow where X marked the spot. And it turned out to be the largest long barrow in northwest Europe. So I thought, well, this sounds really interesting. And normally in this area, as you're probably very aware, JP, their long barrows were used for communal burials. Lots of people went into a long barrow. Not in this case. It was for one person and one person alone. And it turned out that this was a woman. We don't often hear about the women of prehistory, apart from Boudica, from the Iceni tribe, who kicked Roman butts.
Yeah, we had her on the show last week. I didn't tell you that, did I?
Wow.
I'm not kidding. I had this woman. She was supposed to come in from Prepare for Change, really political sort of. It was going to be just a really political thing, like eco stuff. Like not 1 minute into the thing, I said, just relax, take a breath. And she did, and then suddenly Boudica started coming through her. And for an hour she spoke. Absolutely amazing.
I will listen to that one, JP. My ears have pricked up.
So she really gets it. She was a warrior against the empire. And this is what I'm recognizing, that all through my lifetimes, I've been a warrior against the empire. And this is we're all we're not Han Solo. Oh God, who's that fellow? Luke Skywalker. We're all Luke Skywalker. Discovering who we are and realizing that we're part of a rebel fighting.
Yeah, I like that expression. Yeah, I'm in there with you guys.
I bet. But the thing is, so there you are with red hair and elongated skull.
Yes.
Obviously, that's what they say, the Anunnaki hybrids. We were talking about them on the show previously. So, do you want to tell us a little about, from your memories or experiences?
Well, yes. I mean, but I'll just go to, the person in the long barrow first, because I tracked it out. Obviously the body had been taken out by antiquarians and stored in Cambridge or Oxford. They're often stored in, actually. So I found the catalogue number, went to visit her, and as spiritualist people do, JP. I was there with her alone, and I was with a curator as well. So I said to Great Spirit, can you get the curator out the way? And so the curator suddenly said, oh, I've got to go get a call. You wouldn't mind just being with this skull by yourself for a few minutes?
Very well done.
No. And then I got my hands and started to do some energetic work. So I put the hands over her, like where her throat chakra would be, over her third eye, and over the crown chakra to try and ask her story and what she wanted me to say or to discover or to find out. And I really felt a connection to her, actually, and it was quite a positive connection. And she had a very elongated skull. And to be buried like that, she would have definitely had to have been the ruling elite or, a priestess in some manner. So I think that was her role round about, if we use orthodox dating, round about 3100 BC. So she was around about the first phase of Stonehenge when it was being erected, which was a henge monument inside of which there was 56 blue stones in a massive stone circle, which is called Stonehenge Phase 1, and she was related to that. And Stonehenge Phase 1 has a southern entrance as well as a northeast entrance. And at the northeast entrance, you have the heel stone, and every 9 years, the full moon rises above the heel stone in a more accurate astronomical alignment than the midsummer sunrise at Stonehenge, as any archaeoastronomer would tell you. But to keep saying something enough times, it's all about the sun, and thousands of people go there for the sunrise. And indeed, it does arise over the heel stone, but not as accurate to the degree as the moon. And the southern entrance represents the moon at its zenith. That's when it's highest in the sky at midnight. So I really do feel phase 1 of Stonehenge was a goddess cult or culture that was there, probably led by this Neolithic queen, and it was probably a nighttime event as well, because you have a huge areas around that could have easily have been quite reflective with the henge bank white and representing the full moon. I've always suggested going round. So I really do feel that the Stonehenge Phase 1 was a nighttime monument for goddess culture.
Well, of course, if you've got something that they're saying, well, that predicts eclipses, well, that's the cycles of the moon and the cycles of the sun. And so you have to have something that will map the cycle of the moon and the cycle of the sun in order to predict eclipses. And perhaps when eclipses are particular moments, and you can set intentions and do ceremonies and things like that, like we are doing right now in this particular eclipse cycle, where all the planets have lined up, because we're kind of somehow flat in the solar system, aren't we? This is a moment, isn't it?
I agree, and I feel that, round about these times, and you mentioned the eclipses, and the great thing about doing this show with you, I was just about to say that, and then you kind of pop up, and you say the things that I feel. That's great. And I do feel that at the midwinter time of Stonehenge was when you would have that eclipse line up over the heel stones. It was a real big midwinter thing at Stonehenge, where you could really set your intent, work with the energies of the site, work with the lays, and go right the way through Stonehenge, north to south. You have like a global ley line, and when you have a global ley line, it's a gigantic circle that goes around the globe, of which the Druids always said there's 12 mighty circles encompassing the globe. And so that line, I often like to the Greenwich Meridian line, but it's not in Greenwich, it's in Stonehenge, the Stonehenge Meridian line, which has all to do with time as well. And there's been a lot of experiences by people visiting Stonehenge, seem to have these time-lapse experiences as well. And if you do indeed draw down that north-south line through Stonehenge, and then every 30 representing every 30 degrees, which is a reflection of space, you draw another line, because if you have the ecliptic belt containing all of the 12 signs of the zodiac, if you use the equal house system in astrology, each one of those star signs or houses is at 30 degrees distance from one another, and you have 12, and that makes up 360 degrees. So if we do that on the Earth, now we're going to project that using that meridian line of Stonehenge and project that on the Earth. Well, the first quadrant is going to be Aries, and the second line is going to be the star of Taurus for another 30 degrees. And remarkably, if you look to the names of in the land, exactly where that Taurian line starts, well, within a few miles to be truthful, you have the Taurian mountains. And as you go around this landscape global zodiac that you can project on the ground, everything falls into its place. And
so the Stonehenge ecliptic, you could call that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, when we work with these things with our intent, which you were, rightly discussing, you can, reflect that on a huge global level. And it's interesting to know, I projected this using that line, but the Victorian kind of mystery school astrologers, one of which was called Safarel, if I pronounce that correctly, and forgive me if I don't. He called that geodetic astrology, and he said that, wherever you fall into the sign of Aries, and he was using it on a much smaller level than what I've just described, I kind of just put it global. He said that if you're born with the land harmonics of Aries, you're going to be a warrior type, you're going to have Mars energy and etc. And it's interesting to note that all of the countries that fall within Aries within this global landscape zodiac are Germany, Africa, ourselves, the British Isles, where a lot of the wars and, tribal warfare occurs quite predominantly all falls into the sign of Aries. So I feel that there's something to that we could look at on a deeper level, which is what I'm doing for my next book, which includes the massive global lays and like zodiacs from Stonehenge.
Well, yes. Well, as I said previously, I used to also live in Glastonbury, and there's this thing, the land phenomenon, and it seems to be wherever you find a city, is that there will be, and I'm presuming now you see you've given there was a piece of the puzzle here today, and it's this thing that you called the halo. Talk about that again. So when there's an underground stream going through and it hits this vortex, or it makes a vortex, there's a primary halo or something?
Yeah. When you have a large amount of water, like let's say a lake, for instance, you have what's called a geospiral, which is like a spiral pattern. Surrounding that, you have what's called a primary halo pattern, which is, let's say, a few concentric circles, for instance. Surrounding that, you have a big horseshoe of energy called a secondary halo. Now that's always been classed as protective energy. So it's like a kind of protecting the sacred from the profane outer regions, the horseshoe shape. And Guy Underwood, who did a lot of research into this, what he noticed was when you have animals that are vulnerable in the wild, and by that I mean hens and ducks and, to name but a few. Well, in the wild, not all of the foxes ate all of the hens, but they are still vulnerable. And he noticed they would go to this protective pattern, especially to have, their young. So it's like nature would protect you. And they are very energetic to douse. I mean, not all ancient sites have them, because not all ancient sites are under a vast amount of underground water.
So, that's very interesting. So they found, and animals would find, sanctuary in this place. It felt good. It felt like the eye of the storm, the calm place. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. and for example, the primary halo, that's a bit more energetic. So, that would, increase, it's very stimulating. Whereas the geospiral, is, quite calming, but at the same time energizing as well. And all of these energies react to the lunar phases, and it's not the new or full moon. They affect surface waters. It's been noted and thoroughly researched by myself and Underwood, and I continued his work as well. But the 6 days after the new or full moon, that's when the geospiral pattern will change its rotation. And it's really interesting to note by writers such as Pliny the Elder and many other kind of Greek and Roman writers, they always said that the Druids would only cut down mistletoe, very sacred to them, 6 days after the full moon, after the new moon, and then they would collect what's called the snake's eggs. That's where, they shed their skin and it can be in like a ball shape, 6 days after the full moon. So the Druidic masters of the British Isles and elsewhere undoubtedly were very familiar with these energy patterns, and all of the trees that have medicinal qualities known in Druidic lore, like the hazel, apple was very sacred to them, the yew tree, for example, they tend to grow above the geospiral. So you can start to, with a geomancer's eye, for instance, as long as it's nature's put it there, not a planted yew tree, obviously, then you can start to look for particular underground water and particular places where plants grow. Certain plants like underground water, others don't. So you can start to look to nature long, long before you even need to pick up a dowsing rod or recognize it even with your body.
And exactly, this is, and your cat indeed likes this kind of vortex energy. Have you ever lived in, or stayed in a pyramid house? Talking of strange energies.
Well, only once, and it was, I was doing a talk for Dolores Cannon, who's quite famous in past life regression, who did
Yeah, I knew her in a past life.
Yeah, lovely lady.
Just kidding. But probably. Yeah. I didn't know her in this one, but, she's, but, I love the way she used, her hypnotic subjects as telephones, basically. Like a Skype,
Yeah, tell us. Yeah, no, it's great. But, we stayed in a hotel where she was doing transformation 2012, I think it was, or it could have been 2013, I don't know. The years fly by, and I'm sure I'm out by a year quite often.
It's 2017, by the way, and it's freaky. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, and on top of the hotel was a pyramid.
Oh,
that's the only pyramid that I've stayed in.
All right. Okay. What about dome building? Have you stayed in a dome building?
The dome building I have, yes. I mean, that's in terms of earth energy, that's really considered one of the most potent places for earth energy to accumulate quite harmonically in a dome building, and that's why all the long barrows tended to be corbelled in shape.
Corbelled? Say again?
Yeah.
Can you describe that in many words?
What that means is an arch shape, a dome. So the inside of a long barrel was often corbelled, meaning dome-shaped.
Ah, it had a ball-shaped core. Uh-huh.
Yeah, a dome.
Uh-huh. So, it's very strong. They can last a long time. I'm talking with my friend at the moment. I want to build something, like a dome, maybe, or maybe sort of elongated, maybe even like a long barrow, as a greenhouse. And instead of having windows, I have copper wire conducting the organ that comes from the sun. But it's just a thought, Because glass is so, hang on, something's ringing. Somebody's calling in. All right, yeah, stop that. That's what, they shouldn't be doing that. That's rubbish. Anyway, excuse, you probably didn't hear that, Maria, but, there was some, Skype ringing, which happens now because, Skype and my computer are one, and I can't do anything. I can't log on to my my email without having Skype on with noises. It's the vice-like grip of Darth Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Your lack of faith in Windows disappoints me. Why do you stay on XP? I will make you suffer. Anyhow, we're about 15 minutes out from the end of this show. Listen, it's been brilliant, Maria. I'm really enjoying this. It's all up my street. It's up my, right. Can I ask some questions from the chat room, because otherwise they'll explode?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
So, Julie, stones aren't just for Christmas.
I want that on a t-shirt, Julie.
So, here we go. Gaunt's house. What is your, Julie asked me, JP, I have no opinion. I don't even know it. But I know that Gaunt's house is somewhere down in the south of England. And, Don Conroy, do you know anything about the Stonehenge at Gaunt's house?
I haven't been to Gaunt's house at all, but they do hold. I'm very aware that they do hold, a weekend events, and a friend of mine goes along each year. But to be truthful, I haven't been there, so I don't really know anything about it to comment on, unfortunately.
All right, so there we go. Sorry about that, Julie, but we have no idea. It is amazing. I'm just having a scroll through the last couple of hours on the chat room here and seeing if I can find anybody. If you had Alan Wilson, somebody is saying, the King Arthur conspiracy. Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk a little bit about this, about history and, reality and the differences between. When we talk about history, we're talking about like what's been fed to us by what seems to be, completely recently, the Rockefeller Foundation, has determined what goes in, the encyclopedias. And also you were talking about Oxford and Cambridge. They are the arbiters of what is real and what is not real. Is not true.
Yes, unfortunately so, yes. I mean, it is very clicky, isn't it? It's all part of the control.
And
it's I was going to say, it's interesting to note as well that, the major universities in England are all cited on ancient Druidic cores. So wherever you have a core, meaning a Druidic college, you now have a modern day university of prestige.
Isn't that fascinating? And not only that, but, well, you see, I used to work at University College London, and you've, been to college, so the atmosphere in the college is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about, the animals will find the safe zone, and there's this Earth vortex thing. That's the same feeling as you get at the campus, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it certainly is. And the other thing I often point out on radio shows, JP, fact number 2 about the universities and public schools. I live in Marlborough, and we have a very famous public school. Kate Middleton went there, and I don't know, Princess Bee, and, the old Bilderberger, one of the old Bilderbergs. Anyway, within those grounds, you always have a mound, a very ancient sacred mound. We have Merlin's Mount in Marlborough. Eton has its own mound. You start looking at all of the other colleges, they're all associated with prehistoric mounds, which generate an awful lot of, you were talking earlier about orgone energy, JP. Well, they generate that as well. So not only are they on previous colleges, they're on previous prehistoric mounds as well, associated with them, right on a lay that tends to go through one of their main tutorial rooms, has been noted.
Fascinating. So look, Beativa is asking, are the ley lines that run through Glastonbury and Stonehenge also being blocked on purpose, and why won't they let people touch the stones?
That's a really good question. I think Yeah, it is. It really is. And I think sometimes, lines are deliberately blocked, and a lot of people go around clearing them. There's loads of light workers out there clearing lines, thank goodness. Why don't they let us touch the stones? Well, from my personal experiences, I mean, I've been interacting with the energies of Stonehenge since, back in the 80s, so to speak, back in the day of really big hair. But so I really have felt the energies change at Stonehenge, and it was almost like in the 90s it was getting a little bit kind of weaker but gentler. Then round about 2010, it was like a reboot. Something really kicked into Stonehenge, and it was communicating with anybody that wished to kind of communicate with those stones. And from that moment forth, you could not even touch the stones. I think it came into like a reboot, for just want of a better expression, and it's transferring energy quite dramatically, and from that moment on, that came into policy. You can't even touch the stones. They don't want us to touch the stones because we will receive downloads about the past, is my personal opinion.
I believe also that the reason that they do ritual is to freeze frozen body people, basically stuff it with frozen astral bodies, to block the energy that is normally in order for us to be telepathic with each other. It's basically they block the telepathic network by doing ritual sacrifice, so that people can't go near the fear that is contained within the telepathic network, which is preventing people from becoming telepathic, because you don't want to go there, do you? And that, like you were saying, the light workers are doing their best to clear these energies. There's another thing I found, just by random act, just talking to my guides one day, and suddenly this character appears, like, where are you from? I was like, I was stuck in the land. And it all came, he kind of explained the thing telepathically to me. It's like, oh, I see. So that's how they do it. Yeah. So, they do ritual sacrifice. They freeze the ley line, so people can't communicate telepathically anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And I know, from personal experience, a lot of people have felt that, because you can receive these, big downloads at ancient sites, and just at one site outside of Stonehenge, I got a download about a kind of astrological system to do with past lives that I started working with, and Dolores, his company's publishing a book about it actually pretty soon. And that was just bang, a download. I mean, it took me a while to kind of get it, to be truthful. But at these sites, they really do connect us. And it's almost like the ancestors, the spirit of place, they really want to connect with us. Like you were saying, JP, with your guide, getting this wondrous information that can, hopefully help humanity and switch humanity on to what's really going down, so to speak. Then these downloads that we get from these ancient sites can help, and we can, expose the past and lead us into a better future is what I hope.
Well, here's the thing. Here's my opinion of the plan. All right. There's a massive soul group that have been doing this stuff throughout time. All right. Cleaning up after the empire to try and get things going again. And it's a long-term plan. And it's like, okay, we'll meet you about around 2012, okay? And the trick is that we're going to knock ourselves out and forget who we are, so that we can come back, and they won't find us until it's too late. And we'll invent an internet, and they'll think that they're going to spy on us, but really we're using it to activate each other. And what a brilliant plan that was. And nobody remembers. And this is why we're here, and why everybody's connected, and also why everybody's kind of slightly confused that, why am I here? What am I doing here? Why am I listening to this particular pair of people talking? What is it about their voices that makes me feel like I'm at home with them? all these different things come up when people listen to these shows. It's quite fascinating.
Yes, I mean, that's why I think it's always a wonderful job. You know, the radio shows are reaching out to audiences and allowing us to remember and getting people's, you know, alternative opinions is a great thing. So yes, I agree. So I think, you know, that we can go to other ancient sites other than Stonehenge and connect with the stones. We can go to, you know, lots of different stone circles all across where you live in Scotland, Ireland, where you've been, and, you know, in England, as well. And we can, you know, connect to these places and to the, underground water patterns that, I've spoken about and, you know, access information and help us to self-heal as well.
I think it's all part of the plan, isn't it? It's really clever. You know, our higher selves are dead clever. They really know what they're doing. Maria Wheatley, thank you so much. We've gone beyond. We've definitely gone beyond today, haven't we? Definitely. Quick website, please. What's your?
Yes, my current website is theaveburyexperience.co.uk. You can contact me about any course. I do Dowser, Tarot, Past Life Regression at Maria Wheatley at AOL.com, because my esotericcollege.com won't be up for a couple of months. But if you're interested in dowsing, like I say, I do practical workshops, home study or Skype courses, and please get in contact with me. And here to answer some questions that we haven't had time to answer in the chat room as well.
Bloody fabulous. Thank you very much, Maria. It's been a real buzz.
It's been great, JP. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
It stole me to my soul. Good night. Thank you very much.
Good night. Take care, JP. See ya. Bye.
Beyond.